Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream here of DBB Live. This is our 8th stream. We're really excited. We just hope you had a great day so far. We're ready to talk some Detroit basketball. I'm Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, and I am joined, as always, by the Aussie himself, Jack Kelly from Detroit Bad Boys. Jack, my man, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's the morning here, but we're still getting used to the time difference. We'll get there eventually, but I'm good, man.
It's true.
First and foremost, though, I just want to say thank you to everyone that's subscribed to the show. As Wes said, this is only our 8th stream. I think it's our 6th or 7th week doing this. So to already hit 250 subscribers is just amazing. And really appreciate everyone that jumps on each week and comments and interacts with us, because after all, this show is for the fans. So really appreciate everyone. And yeah, let's hop into it.
Yeah, no, and it's been a lot of fun doing it. We're looking forward to keeping it up. And we were planning, just so everyone knows, I'm being joined by Brady Frederickson from Detroit Bad Boys. He may still pop in. Don't know what's going on, some scheduling issues, but we had enough people in the room. We figured we'd just get going and kind of see where the night or the morning takes us. So to open it up, see, I was better that time. To open it up, this is some Jack and I were talking a little bit about, and I don't know his thoughts on it yet, so I'm really interested to hear him. But what might need to happen talent wise for this team to really make a push for the play-in game next year? And that's not necessarily make a play-in game, but just be in the conversation. So in terms of what needs to happen, what would your outline be, Jack?
I think for me, first and foremost, Cade Cunningham needs to be healthy. And I think that goes without saying, but I think it's worth noting that he's still yet to play 82 games in the NBA. He's still yet to play a full season's worth of games. So first and foremost, I think Cade needs to be healthy. We saw in the early stages of last season that he's at least going to be, like, in my opinion, the second best guy on a championship team. Whether he can get to that first level guy, I think that's what we need to see. We just need more games. But we need Cade healthy, and then Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duran to take some steps forward, particularly defensively. I think if Detroit are going to actually truly rise up the standings to push for just that play-in or 10th seed, they'll really have to start on the defensive end. And that leads me to the next point, is bringing in sort of a 3-and-D wing, or just a wing that can defend, I would say. Isaiah Livers, we want that to be him. He's another guy that struggled to stay on the court. So for me, it starts in the defensive end. And yeah, just getting the rotations down pat, figuring out the scheme they want to play. Detroit have played a pretty switch-heavy scheme in the past under Dwayne Casey. So figuring out that defensive scheme. And I mean, I guess we should find out, hopefully, who the head coach is going to be in the next week. And hopefully we start to hear sort of how the team wants to play. But yeah, to round out my answer, it starts in the defensive end, and then just incremental growth from the young core. You're on mute, Wes.
My bad. I'll say that. Still, it's just the 8th stream. We're still ironing out some kinks. No, I was just trying to say that I had a very similar list. I had written down, actually, my first thing too was not only Cade being healthy, but love it. That Cade actually looks like Cade, right? He's not knocking off rust. He comes off, he hits the ground running. I think that'd be really big for him. So that'd be huge. I'd add on to your list, because I had 3-D wing as well. Ivy needs to take a step at the rim. So if Ivy can get better, if Cade still looks like Cade, you've got a really good backcourt starters. You want the rookie to make an impact. You're still making a number 5 overall pick. That's still a really high pick. So maybe a rookie's not good, but if they could at least be impactful, worthy of some minutes, I think that'd be a good start to being in the conversation. And you really don't want Bojan to regress. I think that might be like a really underrated thing. But like if Bojan comes back next year and he's not a 40% 3-point shooter, just because he's older. Like that tanks a lot of the scoring and spacing that's either coming off the bench or in the starting unit. So those would be my big things.
For sure. I Yeah, I've been pretty big on keeping Boyan for next season if the intention is obviously to win some more games. So I just can't envision a man with that jump shot regressing below at least 38%. Like I've said it numerous times. I could watch him shoot all day. Like I could just sit in the gym and watch him catch and shoot threes all day. So um
And he got a
but
later start in his career too, right? There's not as many miles on those tires. So hopefully he can keep pushing Father Time off.
For sure. Well, I think we'll dive into some questions now, Wes. The first one here comes from Christian J. I'm a firm believer in the future of our young core, but I'm more skeptical about our short-term success going into next season. How many teams do you see us realistically leapfrogging in the standings?
That is a good
I'm
question.
just
Let
going
me
to pull
pull
up the
up the
standings
Eastern
for
Conference
us.
real quick.
Yeah. So I will start from so you had Bucks, Celtics, 76ers, and Cavs top four.
Mhm.
Knicks, Nets, Hawks, Heat, 5 to 8. And then you got the Raptors, Bulls, Pacers, and Wizards from 9 to 12.
Yeah, and
See,
then
this is
the Magic Hornets were right above the Pistons there too. No,
see, this is
I do think.
yeah.
Go ahead, Jack.
Just looking at this at a glance, I mean, the 76ers are a team to watch with what happens there. I can't see them trading Joel Embiid. But if James Harden leaves, you never know. I mean, it's tough. Like the Raptors, I could see dropping off a bit. I could see them going into more of a rebuild phase, but I'm not really sure. The Wizards maybe could be going now with a new GM. It is a team Detroit could maybe jump, but the Magic, I don't see it. This is where it gets really tough because these teams, the Hornets have pick 3 this year, or pick 2, sorry. I'm going to say I could see them jumping maybe 2 teams right now. I mean, this is pre-free agency. We don't even have a coach, so it's hard to say. But like, yeah, it's tough when you actually look at the standings and break it down.
And to just pour more water on this too. The Pistons, so the Hornets were 14th. The Pistons were obviously last. They were 15th. The Hornets won 10 more games than Detroit did last year. And I know obviously you had a lot of injuries and there's all the qualifiers we give all the time, but like that's not good. Uh that's not an something that gives you a lot of hope. So you need not only the Pistons to be maybe, gosh, if they're even just by record going to pass the Magic, it looks like they need to be at least, you know, 18 games better in terms of wins next season. That's a lot to ask just to get to 35 wins. So if you're looking at them, you say, hey, maybe you could get to the low 30s. That would have been 14th this past year. So now you're asking for regression. I can see the Hornets still not being great if they're dealing with injuries. I think the Bulls could fall off. The Wizards, I think, were a good pick too. Like you don't know with that new GM, all bets are off there. But in terms of the playoff teams and even the play-in teams, those being the Raptors and the Bulls, I I mentioned the Bulls, so I think the Bulls are possible. I don't see it with the Raptors though. I think they're going
Yeah,
to keep trying to reload and keep going.
that's the
But
thing. Even
oh man,
yeah, even with them needing a new coach, Siakam potentially being on the move, OG Anunoby potentially being on the move, there's just a sense with their organization that they'll retool on the fly. They have Scotty Barnes,
mhm.
who's, I guess, the player they're looking to build the franchise around. Um, but it's really tough. The Detroit won 17 games. So, yes, Cade was injured. If Cade's there, what, they win 23, 24, absolute max, in my opinion, if that. So,
Probably.
and there was so much parity in the East this season. Like you look at this, every team won over 30, 34 games or more, bar the Hornets and Pistons, who you just mentioned. Detroit won 10 less games than the Hornets. Um, Things can change. There's a lot of coach movement this summer, but most of it's with contending teams. So not to be so negative, but I think if we're looking at the standings as a judge of next season, we might be a little bit disappointed. I think it's about, unfortunately, we have to remain patient, and unless a major trade happens, um, yeah, I think if they get to 28 wins, that would be a really, really solid season, in my opinion.
Yeah. And just adding on to that too. I mean, we're sitting here, fan base of a 17-win team that just had the worst record in the NBA. And we're all talking about how they can gear up and go after that play-in game, right? How to just compete for it, be in the conversation. And I mean, yeah, there's theoretically there's a way that it could happen, right? I mean, we're just talking about it to open up the show. But if we're as a fan base sitting here and talking about that as the worst team in the league, I'm pretty sure every last team, 11 through 14 in the standings ahead of the Pistons, are also having that exact same thought. So this is just the effect of that play-in game, right? You've got every team at the bottom really really incentivized to make a run for those low playoff seeds or the play-in seed if they can, right? And it's kind of helping to stave off tanking, which is great for the league competition wise, but for the Pistons, it makes life a little tough.
For sure. And look, we're commenting on this on the 26th of May. Maybe on the
Yes.
26th of July, things change. Um, with the coach, different roster, we'll know how other teams' rosters look. Things could change. So we could be more positive come then. But I think if we're looking at the standings, if the Pistons were to jump up two spots to 13th or even 12th, I think that would be a pretty good season. The next question here is from Harry. Do either of you have interest in the Pistons pursuing HBO Max Strus in free agency?
I love that nickname. That makes me want to say yes, just the nickname. I He's a great shooter, and he's been really fun to watch in Miami. Um, Actually, I don't know if you remember, Jack, but that year that the Pistons had that COVID stretch where I think half the roster that they were playing was G leaguers, right? They ran into the Max Strus buzzsaw when he was a little bit unknown in Miami that year during that stretch. He looked really good then too. So he's been a great player for them, and he can shoot the lights out. But his defense is not awesome, and that is really where more of my concern is this offseason because the
Yeah.
Pistons defense was pretty bad too. So I mean, maybe after a few other needs are set, and he's willing to come to the cold city of Detroit instead of the warm of Miami for pretty cheap, then yes. But otherwise, I think I'd be valuing the defense on the wing a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm with you, Wes. I think Max Strus is a fine player. He's turned himself into a really, really solid contributing player on clearly a great Miami team. I'm not sure, and look, we don't know how coach is, but he is playing under, I think it's fair to say, the NBA's best coach at the moment in Eric Spoelstra, who just has a knack
Yep.
for um, cultivating and finding talent out of nowhere and then sort of just maximizing everything in that player whilst nullifying their weaknesses, whether that's on defense or offense. I'm not sure I could trust bringing Max Strus in on whatever I haven't looked at what his value would be, but I would say it would be high teens in the millions, around 18 million. I don't know, say it's that. I don't know if I could trust him coming to Detroit and um, him being able to be, used properly. So really like Max Strus, just don't think so in Detroit. I think we have Boyan to help with shooting. Um, Bryce. Oh,
He knows my answer. That's why he asked.
that's a really good question. I think I know yours as well, Wes. What is your answer?
I'm taking Dylan Brooks. I know he's gonna cost a little bit more, so that's kind of a negative there. But I think the defense and I do like the attitude a little bit off the bench. So I'd value Dylan Brooks a little bit more than Max Strus.
Oh, this is so tough because I was very against Dylan Brooks the other week when we discussed this.
Yeah.
But he is a great defensive player. Don't think there's any disputing that. And I just did open the show by saying this team needs defense. I'm going to say Dylan Brooks. Next question. Now, do you have any more thoughts on the Max Strus signing potential?
You know, not exactly, but I do like the general idea of excuse me, what like Max Strus coming to Detroit. I know he's getting playoff minutes, but he might be more of an end of the rotation guy, right? Sorry, excuse me. So he might be more of an end of the rotation guy. I like the idea of getting someone who can shoot it like that, that would get kind of spot minutes on the team, right? Like if I'm signing someone that's going to be a mainstay backup, the lack of defense really makes me pause. But if you're looking at guys that would be maybe the 10, 11, 12 guy that could just come in and be a flamethrower off the bench for 10, 15 minutes, I like the idea of that type of player. So
For sure. I did just have a question here. Oh, what about Matisse Thybulle? Thibault? I had to bring this up
yeah.
because he plays for the Australian national team. I wouldn't
Oh,
mind taking. I wouldn't mind. I don't know what he's going to cost. I think he might have shot the ball a little bit better in Portland towards the end of the season, but I
yeah.
don't think he's a player you'll ever trust as a 3-point shooter. You'd be taking a flyer, and it feels like he's a really good off-ball help defender or just disruptor. And from what I've heard and read, potentially his on-ball stuff's not as great as the reputation. But in a team like Detroit, I'd be open to. I'm not sure what it would cost, but I'd be open to signing him to maybe a short-term deal.
Yeah, me too. No, he is a very good defender.
Yeah,
So
I'd take him over
yes.
Dylan Brooks.
Well, if we're factoring in price, you've got
Yeah,
a
yeah,
really strong argument, right? Because he's not going to cost a lot. The book's kind of out on him in the NBA, and it'd be a flyer to see if maybe that 3-point shot ever comes around. But like, you're not really asking him to dribble the ball or do any of the rip and goes that Brooks would end up doing offensively. So he's very niche player.
yeah.
So he'd be a lot cheaper.
All right, moving on here. Data-driven Pistons fan. Is it possible to improve a lot defensively if you play 48 minutes of basically two second-year centers, Durant and Wiseman? Love this question. I'll let you go first, Wes.
Ouch. Yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer, you would need those two basically second year centers to become better defenders, right? And I'm hopeful. I'm a lot more hopeful with Duran than I am with Wiseman. So I think Wiseman for sure. You're bringing him off the bench, but Duran at least has shown a little bit as a weak side rim protector, and he's shown a little bit in drop coverage here and there. So I think if he continues to make some progression, if his if things slow down for him a little bit more, he's still really young. If those things happen, it's very possible to improve with him as your starting center and Wiseman backing up. You run the risk though of it not happening, right? Because they are what 19 and 21, 22. It could definitely go poorly.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think improving a lot defensively, I think the likelihood of that is extremely low, but I think you can see improvements. Uh, I do feel like centers are at the core of every defense. If your center isn't
Mm-hmm.
at least average defensively or above average defensively, your defense is probably not going to be great just because of how big of an impact they have at controlling the paint. Yeah, it definitely does scare me. If especially if we're talking wins, if all your center minutes are going into Durant and Wiseman, and you're going to probably have, say, they draft Jarris Walker or Taylor Hendricks, who project to be good defenders, still don't know as rookies. Like it's the same with the backcourt. They're still going to be both very. Detroit's core is extremely young. I think if you want to say, not to get too off track from the question, but if you want to say Cade, Ivan, Duran are like the three foundational pieces of this roster right now. All of them haven't played 82 games in a season, like yet. So your building blocks are still so young and have so much to learn. So that sort of ties back in with the earlier question about the play-in. So yeah, improving a lot defensively with those two. I think the likelihood's low, but I think I'm going to be really interested to see with Jalen Duran in particular how he looks defensively in the preseason, and if we hear anything coming out from the team just about his defensive improvement or training he's been doing, because I think the offensive stuff was fun, but defense, if he can improve there, that's where he's going to become one of the league's best centers.
Yeah. Well, and just to add on, right? Like you can help Jalen Duran out, right? Like you can get. I mean, Stu being healthy is probably going to help. If you could get another wing that's a good defender, that's going to help. Like you can make their job easier by not just having turnstiles going to the hoop, right? So
Yeah,
if everything's not funneling down to Jalen Duran, it makes his life a lot easier. It'll make him at least appear to be a better defender early on because he is so young, right? So I mean, there are ways to do it where you take enough off of his plate, and all of a sudden his role is simplified to just weak side rim protector, right? Like for example, and that's all he can focus on. Then he might make a pretty big leap in that one specific area. But if you're going to just load his plate like they did last year and basically just have a free run to the rim no matter what and tell him to clean it up, like
yeah.
I'm not hopeful, but maybe he'd be great anyway.
Agreed.
Help him out.
Agreed. Yeah, exactly. And I think last season's roster, there were so many injuries. The lineup changed so often, and then the last 2 months of the season was just like two-way guys. There's a lot of like, I know a lot of teams have obviously injuries and their roster changes, but Detroit's roster just never felt set the entire season. Felt like there was always players missing in the front court, back court, mixing in different two big lineups. So that stuff all plays a factor as well. Moving on, next question here is from Matthias Machado. Do you think that if Ollie is hired, our pick will be Osar Thompson? Wes and I were just talking about this, so
We were.
I'll let Wes go first.
Yeah, we're literally just talking about this in the pre-show. No, I don't think hiring Kevin Ollie is going to impact whether or not they're taking a Thompson twin at all. And I think that because one, Ollie actually left the OTE, right? Like he didn't spend the full year there. And then two, the Pistons have without a doubt already interviewed the actual coaches at OTE. So there's no new intel that Ollie's going to bring to this conversation. Um, so whether or not they do end up taking a Thompson twin, I don't think it's going to have any impact or be impacted by hiring Kevin Ollie. Like I think they'd just be taking him on their own merit from whatever intel they've already gotten, and they know probably today in May, a month before the draft.
Absolutely. I don't even think I need to add anything. I think Weaver as well clearly has a great relationship with Kevin Ollie. I think regardless if he was being hired for the search or not, he would give, like, the intel's just there. These teams, like, clearly well connected, the scouting department, everyone, there would be nothing that I would be very surprised if there's stuff Kevin Ollie knows that, yeah, the rest of the OTA staff and people around the league don't know.
I mean, like honestly, he could probably only hurt the Twins, right? Like if you've only heard positive information coming from OTE, and then you hire Kevin Ollie, and Kevin Ollie goes, "Those guys were terrible to coach, and I hated the whole time there. That's why I left." Like then you probably don't pick the Thompson Twins. But if he comes and talks about how great his experience is, then like you're not adding anything either. So I feel like he could actually, in a weird way, only hurt the situation, not really help it. So I don't
Yeah,
think the positive outcome is what you get there if he does
definitely.
impact the situation.
And I still think for a lot of fans, it's a very valid question to ask, because I can see the
For sure.
ties and where Matthias is coming from. And I mean, I just think that stuff gets a touch overblown. I think, these NBA teams have plenty of intel going into the draft. Next question from Chris. Every year, great playoff role players get paid in free agency. Which role player would you want to pay most, and which one would you be most fearful to pay? I'm going to put a list.
I got two. You look them up. Yeah, I got two. I would want to pay Grant Williams. I really like Grant Williams. I don't think he'd be ridiculously expensive. I think he's probably somewhere in that 15 range. Good shooter, high IQ team defender. I like the idea of paying Grant Williams and getting him in Detroit and just telling him to do the exact same thing he did in Boston with a little bit more minutes. The guy I'd be a little fearful to play, or to pay. I don't know if he really counts as a role player. I don't really like the idea of Chris Middleton. He's just so injury prone. I'd just be a little nervous about it. Like if you sign Chris Middleton, you're getting 20 games of him, and then that's the end of it. He seems like he's winding down, despite that he's not actually all that old. So those would be my two picks.
For sure. I think the role player that's going to get paid this offseason is a former Piston who's playing for the Denver Nuggets, Bruce Brown. I think he's going to.
I thought you were going to say Reggie Jackson.
Or KCP or Ish Smith. They're all on the team. I don't know if they're all free agents though. But I think Bruce Brown has really, I mean, if you obviously as Pistons fans, we know, I would assume most of us have tracked Bruce Brown's career from when he went to Brooklyn and how he sort of evolved into this 0.5 man almost that would screen and roll and just kill teams with his floater. So now he's evolved as a corner shooter, corner 3-point shooter, and he's really thriving alongside Nikola Jokic just as a cutter. And he's just the ultimate connecting like guard, I would say. Does a bit of everything. I think he's really going to get paid this summer. And which one would I be most fearful to pay? Max Strus? And that's not because I think he's a bad player. I just think he's. Oh, Cam, that's a great question.
He's I do think paid.
Cam has. Yeah, I think he's become. Oh, just to add another guy who's going to get paid, Austin Reeves. I think that goes without saying.
Yes,
he was going to probably get paid regardless before the playoffs. Then to finish the playoffs with 4 20-point games, he looked like the Lakers' best sort of dribble drive threat in the half court. LeBron's still like a beast in transition, but in the half court, like I'm telling you, Austin Reeves pick and roll, Austin Reeves just like attacking the rim, like he's shifty, like he's a really fun player. Like he's going to get paid. But Cam Johnson, I think he has become slightly overrated because he's the only wing. Well, he's everyone's sort of favorite wing. He can shoot, and I'm sorry, guys, just had some technical issues there. I wouldn't want to pay Cam any more than like 22 million. Like when I start seeing 25 million, that's good. Yeah, that scares me. And like I don't want to be the Pistons fan. We're a 17-win team saying no to all these free agents, but Cam Johnson at 25 million or more, I don't know. That's a lot. What are your thoughts, Wes?
Not pass too. I think that's way too much for pretty much just a really good 3-point shooter. Like I know he's actually a decent defender too, but when at least the way that the cap's all right now, I know it's going to go up in the future, but right now, $25 million is like a really good and impactful player. And Cam Johnson is a great 3-and-D player, but he's not $25 million in my book. So I would be a little bit afraid to pay that. Similar to like I wouldn't want to be paying Kuzma big money. Like I think these are all examples of Tobias Harris in Philadelphia, right? Where like really good player, worth worth the payday that he's going to get, right? Like they've earned it. They're really good players, but I don't want to be the one to pay it. Someone
I
else should.
think, yeah, I think if Detroit and like Kuzma's another great guy you bring up. I think if Detroit did have like that 28 to 32 win season, I might be a bit different. But I think this team, due to injury and they just sort of maybe have slipped back a season. And I think this next season will still be development. I mean, Trey Weaver signed an extension, so I don't think he's getting fired unless this team wins 17 games again, which we all hope doesn't happen. But I still think I guess the rookie extensions really start to come into play next summer with Cade and that sort of thing. So, I mean, this is why it's tough being a GM. Look at me, I'm just sitting here trying to spitball and I'm struggling. But yeah, 25 million for Cam. I'm out. Next question here is from Chili Damon. Not every team has our cap space, though. We can flip a large chunk of the roster. See, I brought this up because I just wanted to discuss sort of the notion of cap space. I don't think cap space for Detroit is overly valuable this offseason unless they're going, like, I wouldn't be opposed to Troy taking on some bad money for some more picks. That's just me. I don't have a player in mind. But if Troy was able to get back into that first round, late teens, by taking on a bad contract, depending on who it is, that's a way I could see the cap space being used.
Yeah. No, that'd be my priority too. Either another pick in the first round this year or a couple of future picks to take on a bad deal. But I think you're right on. Yeah, true. Tobias Harris would be a good target there for that as well. A future pick from Philly to get off of that deal for sure. And Tobias is still pretty good, so I'd like that. I think the thing with free agency is they're not going to be a destination, right? Like if they were good, then they'd be really attractive to a lot of free agents. But as of right now, they're not, and so you're looking at the same kind of middle of the road guys that we tend to look at every year. You know, those would be the Grant Williams, probably the Dylan Brooks, the Kelly Oubre's, right? Like not the top tier guys, good players still. So I think those guys are on the table. But in terms of the actual value of that cap space, I think it's exactly what you said. It's space to get future assets for at a time when hopefully the team's better and you can then either take those picks or try to flip them for package them for another star player. So I think that's the cap space value, I guess, for this year.
Definitely. And just to add on, I think Tobias, I think he'd be a 40, is it $40 million expiring this upcoming season? I'm pretty sure. So,
I believe so. I'll look it up.
and I think he would fit really nicely with this team. But obviously, a lot of that depends on how Philly look to pivot following their disappointing playoff exit. The
You're right.
next
39.
39. There we go. Next question here is from Chili once again. Do you think it would be worth it to get Jerami Grant? I think he would be good for whoever we draft at 5 if we go power forward or small forward.
Yes. So I think I all right. I'll change it. I'm going to say kind of. I don't like the money that you would have to shell out to get Jerami Grant. I think Jerami Grant, the player, would be really good fit with either Whitmore or Walker or even Hendricks or Anthony Black. So I think the combo forward type that Jerami Grant is, right? He can shoot, he can dribble, he can pass it a little bit, and he's a good team defender. I think that's really valuable, whichever forward spot you're playing him at, next to whichever the other forward is that you draft. So I don't know if Jerami Grant himself would be worth going to get. I think you can get maybe 70, 75% out of that out of a guy like Grant Williams or a Dylan Brooks. but that like concept, that idea, fitting next to whoever they're going to pick at 5, I think that's a really nice fit.
Yeah, for sure. The idea of Jerami Grant and a player of that sort of archetype, and even I think he's 28, 29 years old. I'm not opposed
Not old
either
yet.
to bringing in players who are in the prime of their career, because once again, that'll help with the defense, and just stability of the team overall. So I like the thinking in terms of Jerami Grant. Actually, the possibility, like I think it's very low. Something we've discussed on this podcast previously with Sean Corp. Just doesn't seem like Jeremy's going to come back to Detroit and leave a situation in Portland where he already rejected an extension during the season of 4 years, 112 million. So he's going to cost in that mid $30 million a year range annually. Might not be. I just don't think it's going to happen in Detroit, to answer. And it looks like we have Brady here now joining us.
The man.
We had some technical difficulties, but we're going to add him into the stream here.
Better late than never, right?
How's it going, man?
Absolutely.
Thanks
How
for
you
joining
doing?
us.
I'm good. I've been watching you guys as I've been trying to figure this out. But no, thank you for having me on for the little bit that I'll be here.
Yeah, you're good. Thanks for joining.
Well, we did want to ask Brady, we were going to open the show just getting your thoughts on, first of all, your reaction to the lottery last week. And then second of all, just who are the guys or a couple of prospects you like at pick 5 for Detroit right now?
I'd say my reaction was, when you've run like 5 miles and you're done and you just put your hands on your knees and you need to like take a breath and just stare at the ground. That's kind of how I felt when they popped up at number 5. Cause I was watching it with my wife and I told her, I was like, well, we don't have to worry about it yet. They can only fall to 5. So I said that. And then, lo and behold, 5 comes up and there they are. So, no, not pleased. Very negative for a good week there. But there's guys I like there at that spot, and it was like I like them, but did I want to be in position to grab them? No. But like I don't think you'll find a bigger Jarris Walker fan than I am, just from like watching Houston all year and just seeing all the versatile things he can do. I think that'd be great. That's probably my number one guy now. But the board is subject to change.
For sure. I think when we were doing the show last week, it was just a state of, we were laughing in disbelief. And I mean, I didn't even realize the Spurs had actually won the lottery. As soon as I saw Detroit come up, I didn't even realize. I was just in shock because I didn't see a world where Detroit dropped past 4. I thought pick 4 at worst. And that was stupid of me because there's a 47% chance of them falling to 5. But it's just, I don't think it's happened before. Hasn't happened since the odds were changed. So, yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think it's one of those. I think the shock factor is now worn off. I can tell just from like the way people are talking on Twitter now and the way that like comments are on the like posts at DBB where like people have kind of come to terms. It's kind of like the 7 stages of grief where it's like shock and then it's like you kind of come to terms with it and stuff. And we've kind of like hit the peak and we're coming back down. But now I just think it's like the beauty of it before. And I told you this, Jack, when we talked, like we DM'd about this like a month ago and you asked me to come on, was like, oh, I hope the draft show, when we do the draft show, it's done after 1 pick. And we don't have to worry about it because that's the easiest thing we could do. And here we are, we're gonna have to wait 4 picks and everyone, that's the thing too. Everyone's gonna have a different favorite guy. At least last year, you were like team Jaden, you were team Keegan Murray, or you were team Shaden Sharp. Like, there was really no other option there. So it was like, at least everyone had a camp. But this year it's going to be like 5 guys. And I mean, I think team Cam Whitmore is like definitely the resounding favorite here in May, but like, it's going to be wild seeing how many people are happy and sad and pissed and all that stuff once it happens.
So you were saying you're a big fan of a Jarris Walker. What do you think that fit could be next season? Like where might he slot in? I know you say he's pretty versatile and he does occasionally flash some ball handling. So where do you think Jarris Walker's slotting?
He's a 4. I think he's I keep making this comparison that he's everything that they say, they being like the Pistons and, people. And I love Isaiah Stewart to caveat this, but Jarris Walker is everything that people say Isaiah Stewart can be in terms of a playmaking, stretchy, like defensive, undersized big man. And I've seen like comments that maybe he could play the 3. I don't really see that. I don't think he's fast enough. But if you go back and look at like his tape when he played at IMG Academy in high school, or I think that's the right one. Either way, he was like the primary ball handler all the time. So, there we go, Bryce. I love it. He was a primary ball handler. He was creating off the dribble. He was doing the stuff that when we see Stu do it once every 3 games, we're like, oh my God, he could do it. Whereas then Jarris Walker can do it. I don't know if the shooting comes around to the way it like needs to be in terms of being like a knockdown shooter. But, if I had to pick like a comparison, like if Jarris Walker ended up being like Al Horford, I could see that. Or a Paul Millsap-y kind of guy. I don't think he's the rebounder Paul Millsap was coming out, but like those 2 dudes who were like just versatile 4s who could do a lot despite not being gigantic or overly athletic, which he is, but he's not, a explosive player.
Yeah, the Paul Millsap, that's a really good comp. I really like that comparison. Millsap, he was a really good player, like with Atlanta, and then he was okay with the Nuggets early on, but I think that's a really good comp because I think Walker, some people, he isn't as tall as you would expect. Like I think he measured at like 6'6" without shoes, obviously, but I think there might be a misconception that he is like 6'9", 6'10", which he's got a massive wingspan. I don't think it's going to be a major issue.
38-inch vertical too.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the tools. It's just like you look at him. And the thing with Millsap, too, was like when Millsap played college ball at Louisiana Tech, he was like nation's leading rebounder, like interior scorer. Then he came to Utah and like had to learn how to play with those big guys they had back then. And he became like this shooting 4 in a world that we didn't have a ton of those. So like his versatility was like a jumbo small forward who could just play alongside like Derek Favors and those guys. And so I'm not really worried about his fit at this point either, because like part of me wants, and Wes and I have gone back and forth on this before, but part of me wants the Pistons to like figure it out and do something that makes them better soon. But at the same time, like people have been saying, like I get tweets all the time where people are like, we need to draft a small forward. And I'm like, no, we don't. Who cares? Like you don't need to draft anything. You draft the best player and you hope it works. Like they don't have enough good players, to do that. Like if Jerami Grant comes back next year, like you guys were talking about, like, sure, he fits great next to Jarris Walker and Jalen Duren, I think. So like there's different ways. And I think even Bogey, if they kept him, he would be, helped by that because he'd have a defender who, if they put him into screening roles and stuff, he's able to switch and bail him out. Whereas, Isaiah Stewart tries, but I don't think he's the caliber of defender.
For sure. And I think, I've thought this for a while, even before the lottery, like if Detroit were going to fall to 4 or 5, like Walker just seems like a Troy prospect. Like he just seems to fit everything Troy loved in a prospect. So, take that for what it's worth, but that's just a feeling I've had.
Yeah, it's weird that we have that like conceived notion where it's like we know what a Troy player is, even though like, because I guess the reason for that would be to say like Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart were guys who were not like, who were like worked hard, had the right mindset, played, incredibly, hard out there, worked at the game and stuff. But then you look at Walker and it's like he does all that stuff, but also he's like a crazy athlete, which it seems like the Pistons have only just begun really looking at prospects who are, bouncy and athletic like that in that respect. So it's kind of just also, I think, his Troy's viewpoint on prospects and what fits and what needs to fit kind of growing because, everybody has to fit next to Cade. The rest of it kind of is just moot. So it's like find the best talent that fits next to him, not necessarily what position they fit. And hopefully he's good enough to make it work. I think that's kind of the future outlook as it stands today,
And something else with Troy's, like we talk about the physical profile, but character and just personality, I've noticed, like I've watched some Jarris Walker interviews and like he seems like more of a soft-spoken sort of, more of a reserved sort of person, at least in interviews. And like that sort of like Sadiq was more of a quieter guy. Stu's a heart and soul sort of guy and will call players out, but more of like, the Pistons sort of seem to target these, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like these lesser or quieter sort of prospects that are great character.
I really like how you put that too, Brady, because I think that's probably the trick, and I might have to do a better job keeping that in mind with the draft, with free agency. It's trying to find the best talents that could fit next to Cade Cunningham.
Mhm.
Like that's got to be the frame of mind, at least for now, until Cade proves that he can't be that guy. So, no, I think you're pretty spot on that one.
Yeah, and I mean it's the same thing with free agency. I mean, you can look to. I mean, I certainly don't. I liked the little Eugene Omoruyi like thing. I certainly don't want to see him starting games again. In any fashion. So like, if they went out and found a new small forward that was like a middling starting caliber player, but like. That's the kind of thing. Does he work next to Cade? Can he space the floor? Does he play defense? Like those are the kind of things you want, and that's where I just feel like I understand the Whitmore hype and I like it. And Anthony Black's a guy that I've been, I forget who made this comparison to me the other day, but someone kind of said Anthony Black and OG Anunoby are kind of the same archetype. And like, I think Anthony Black's still physically a few years away from being that because OG looks like a football player. Like he looks like a linebacker out there and he
He's a
can shoot.
linebacker.
And Anthony Black can't shoot yet, but Arkansas this year was really fun to watch, and they were a very like team-oriented deal. They had all these hot prospects, and like Nick Smith didn't have a great year, but they ended up coming together and making a run. And it's credit to the talent, it's credit to the coach Eric Musselman, but like that team had NBA dudes. Like that's why they were able to figure it out. Like you don't go from being like underwhelming for half a season and then being that good and getting to like the Elite Eight without having NBA dudes who are willing to make sacrifices. And Black was one of those guys who, filled his role and played it. So who knows what he can be at the next level. That's the same thing with Jarvis Walker. Like what we saw what they did in college, but their role in the next level is going to be entirely different.
For sure. We'll get to some questions here. C and Ink. They doubt the Pistons will use pick 5. Seems like they're straying away from adding another 18 to 19-year-old. Most likely they will increase the average age of the team this summer and trade the pick. So that's more of a statement than a question. What do you guys think? Do you think how realistic do you think it is that Detroit trade that pick, or what sort of percentage chance would you put on that?
I want it to happen, but I don't think it will. I think you look at it and it's like Houston wants to get good soon. They pick 4th. Portland wants to be good even sooner. They pick 3rd. So like if you're looking at trading for somebody who makes a difference on your team, you're 3rd in line behind those two teams who arguably have, maybe not Houston. I don't really like how that thing's going, but Portland obviously like, guys, playing with Dame and playing with Anthony Simons and probably Jerami Grant, like there's something there where the 3rd pick can fetch you something. Whereas like, I don't know if at that point, like unless those two teams don't trade, the Pistons might have a chance. But on the flip side, if Portland can't trade their pick for what they want and Houston can't trade their pick for what they want, like a difference making guy, why would we think the Pistons could? Because those picks are better, unless the Pistons are just looking for something less. But I'd like to see them get somebody like an adult. I think that would be valuable, but I don't think they'll do it.
Yeah, no, I'm on the exact same page. And I've said this before, but like you said, I don't think that the return you would get for the 5th pick is worth coming off the 5th pick. I do think that this line of thinking really applies to 31, though. Like I could see them flipping that pick to a contender without a 1st-round pick and just taking back some salary on a rotation player who, borderline for a really good contending team, 7th best player on this team. So I could see that happening. But with the 5th, I guess I'd be very shocked if they traded that away.
No, I agree. I think that's also like you look at how they looked at the 2nd round last year when they took Persida with like the 37th pick. I mean, they passed on
after trying to get out of it.
Yeah, they tried to get out of it,
like
and
7 picks in a row too.
Yeah, and the kid and who played for, I think he played for G League Ignite last year. He plays for the Mavericks now. Little
Hardy,
guard.
I think, right?
Yeah, Jaden Hardy. Like that would have been a guy who kind of redundant with Jaden Ivey in the fold, but like still a good talent who proved he could do stuff on a team that didn't, that wasn't good, but wasn't terrible either. So like there was talent that they could have done. And I think going to get Persida was basically like their way of saying we don't need any more kids. So to this point, like maybe that's kind of the thinking, but I think how they were thinking this time last year versus how they are thinking this year is night and day.
For sure. No, I think you guys have hit on that one well. I'll move on to the next question here from Caleb. What are the traits you put the most emphasis on when evaluating these prospects? Like basketball IQ, athleticism, etc. So what have you guys been looking for so far this draft cycle?
I think athleticism still fairly high on my list because I think Cade isn't the like explosive athlete that can, lead things. Jaden Ivey's athletic, Jalen Duren's athletic, but I think you just, especially like if you draft somebody who's going to play that 3-4 spot, like you need somebody who can move because that's the most athletic position in the NBA. And so maybe outside of point guard, ironically with guys like John Morant and whatnot, but I think athleticism, but it's always like a good head. Like I think that the one thing I do like about Troy Weaver that I've never wavered on is like he doesn't draft like knuckleheads. And like for better or for worse, sometimes you have to like break some eggs to make an omelet and try that. But for the most part, he has brought good people into this organization. And I think that's part of why like last year, the mess it was, things never got, sketchy, or the locker room was never an issue. And that's, Dwayne Casey gets credit too, but like, that's part of it, I think, is those guys were all smart players who, had their limitations. But, I think those are the two things for me, which is, kind of what they mentioned here.
Yeah, I'd be echoing the same thing. Just the basketball IQ, the feel, right? Knowing where you're supposed to be on the court, knowing where your teammates are supposed to be on the court, that's big. And I mean, that's not always been the case with some of the bench players that we saw out there last year for no fault of their own. I mean, a lot of them were, it's 2 ways, it's G Leagues, it's 10 days, it's all that. But that would be a big step up. Then, like you said, athleticism. I would add, I'd probably add ball handling to that, or at least ball handling potential. I'm really keen on adding another guy that could take some pressure off of Cade and Ivey. So right now, specific to the Pistons, I'd put that pretty high up on the list. But I think those would probably be my 3 big things.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add just with this draft in particular and where Detroit are picking and the prospects available is just I've really just been focusing on like how they operate off ball offensively, how they're going to play alongside sort of Cade, Ivey. Do they like to cut? Can they shoot off screens? Just that sort of thing.
That's kind of the thing that scares me about Whitmore. And I like him. He's probably my second favorite right now, although I think Asur Thompson's kind of surging up with every workout video I see, which I know is like the devil's juice. Like I should not fall for that crap, but I have been lately. But the thing with Cam, and like I was going to write this and I didn't get around to it, but I looked up like a basketball reference search of guys that had a usage rate as high as him in college, freshmen, a turnover rate as high as him, and an assist rate as low as him. And if you go down the list, I can't tell you the names offhand, but not a single one was ever a lottery pick. That's just like one part of his his profile. And obviously like basketball reference stats aren't going to like take into account that he's just an absolute mutant athlete. And that's like a big selling point for him. And in terms of the same with Jaden Ivey last year, I mean, Jaden Ivey was a fine college player, like a really good guard, but like the fact that he was like the fastest player arguably at any level, like that certainly is something that stats can't measure, but you have to kind of look at from a scouting perspective. But I think that's true. I think it's just like, they need ball movers, not ball stoppers. And that's why I like Walker. Again, I think he's going to be out there. He's going to fit the system. He can fit his role. And it's like, with guys like Miller or Scoot or Victor, you were going to build your system around them. So they didn't have to fit in. People had to fit in around them. So now it's like who fits into this as it states now. And so, that's where I think I keep coming back to that. Cause like the Thompson twins, like they were kind of the man in a very lackluster league for 2 years. And like, how easy is it going to be to go be a 4th option or a 3rd option, And it's just like those things kind of play themselves into basketball IQ in terms of just knowing your role and adjusting how you play.
Yeah, I think this ties well into our next question here from Bryce. Would love to hear all 3 of our top 3 big boards right now as of today. So Brady, we sort of heard you've got
the top
Walker.
3 of the draft, yeah.
Yeah,
let me look mine up real quick. I updated it after the lottery. Let me look it up. It's on Twitter. My tiers. So I'm not gonna. I'll ignore the obvious guys, but I will say once we get past Victor, Scoot, Brandon Miller, I guess I'll start with Brandon Miller. I say Brandon Miller is my number 1 if he falls, but I don't think he will. Jarris Walker, my number 2. I have Amen number 3, Whitmore 4, and Hendricks 5. Hendricks, the more I've kind of looked into it, I'm not really sure what that is. I think he's just the tall, athletic guy who was good for a team in the American, not even really that good of a team. I mean, I think even in games that Houston played, I think Walker kind of ate him up in their head-to-heads in the conference. So, yeah, that's kind of where it sits, but it's very fluid. I think it's mostly just Jarris Walker is the one I'm most confident in, and the rest of it is like, ask me tomorrow, it could be completely different.
I'm gonna leave out Miller as well, just because I just don't. I agree. I just don't think there's much of a chance that he's there. So my number 1 spot with the Pistons would be Walker, and then Whitmore and Anthony Black are neck and neck for me. I had a few days ago Whitmore over Black, in the 2-3, but the more the more info, the more watching, I'm questioning it a little bit if I need to move Whitmore down. But that'd be my grouping of 3: Walker, Whitmore, and Black, and the last 2 in some order.
Yeah, I think I've soured a little bit on the Thompson twins, in particular Asar Thompson. I still think I'm going to say my board is Cam, and then Jarris Walker at the moment.
Amen's the weird one. Like I know he's the better athlete. He's probably the better playmaker, but like that's the guy who I'm like, you were the big cheese for your entire life, and now you're going to step from like pro ball to pro ball. And like I understand everyone does that, but like I just feel like that's one of those situations where that dude was the like epicenter of their team. And I'm just wondering how that would work because I mean, we don't even know, frankly, how Ivy and Cade are going to work in a longer than 15 game stretch. So it's like those two need the ball a lot. And we saw Ivy playing so well at the end of the year when he had the ball so much. And then just factor in like, whether it's Boyan or whether it's Jerami Grant, take your pick, whatever small forward you want to sign. If you sign one, like that guy's going to want the ball a lot too. So it just makes me wonder, like, if that guy doesn't have the ball in his hands, amen, what is he providing on the offensive side? Because I think defensively his athleticism can help you even if he's not a great defender yet. But like, what does he do for you if he can't shoot and he doesn't have the ball,
And Wes has raised a good point. Like, he doesn't even want to shoot. That's the thing as well. Like, he's not. So, and look, I've been high on him, and I think, I don't know, just the more I've dove into the draft and had a look at these other prospects now that we know where Detroit is selecting, yeah, there's definitely a lot of cause for concern.
Well, here I have a question on this question is we know that we've got like that core group that we talked about where it's like the Thompsons and Jarris and Whitmore and stuff. Is Anthony Black the only like lower top 10 guy, Hendricks and Black, maybe that you could see creeping up to like number 5? Because there's always that guy. I think back to the first Weaver draft when Patrick Williams went from being like the 11th or 12th pick, where the Pistons were like, we can get him at 7. And then it was like, nope, he's going 4. So like that guy is going to exist in this. I don't know who it's going to be, but this month someone's going to have like the best PR and the best workouts, and they're going to be a great kid who shoots the ball really good. And like, I'm still trying to figure out who that guy is going to be, because I look at like after the top 10 guys and I just don't know, where that's going to happen.
I mean, I don't know about pick 5, but Cason Wallace, maybe out of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I've seen Rafael Barlow say he's a mini Kawhi. And I think the context there was like as a guard defender, mm-hmm. and just sort of his frame, like he's a real strong guy. I don't know. I don't think so. I'll pick 5, but he's a guy. I think he's normally around pick 11, 12. Yeah. I could see maybe going at 7 or 8. But I think it's Anthony Black. And I think Hendricks has been a riser, but I definitely, there is going to be a guy in this next month now that, I mean, the playoffs, we're pretty much only going to have the finals left. Like, mm-hmm. we're really in those final weeks, and there will be someone who jumps.
Yeah, and it's like
no.
Go ahead, Wes.
Okay, I was just gonna agree. I think if you got to put money down, it probably is Anthony Black. Though I mean, I haven't really seen him being mocked in the tens really. So maybe that's like a cheating answer, right? Like a guy jumping from 8 to 5 or 4. It's not huge, but he can just fit so many places, right? Like he's definitely a 2 or a 3. He could probably play a 1. He's a good team player, right? Moves the ball a lot, good team defender, good help defender. Like I don't know, he seems like a guy, and he's young, athletic, and does have a fairly high ceiling. So that'd probably be my pick as the surprise. I'd be cool with him at 5, honestly.
So here's a weird one that I'm not predicting, as I'm just saying, is I look at like the top 10 guys and like, what have we talked about with like each of them? It's like, can they shoot? Maybe they can shoot. Like, I don't know if they're going to be able to shoot. And like the only guy looking at like how this breaks down, I think Brandon Miller's I'm not sure how good of a shooter he is. I think he's going to be fine, but his splits from the first half of the season to the second half were pretty stark. But I think after that, going down, I keep falling back on Grady Dick, who I know is like not the most sexy prospect or anything like that, but he's big and he moves okay and he gives a crap on defense and he is just a knockout shooter. And I just wonder, like, would a team, I don't know if he fits with a team like this, but like Orlando was one of the worst 3-point shooting teams last year, and they kind of want to be good sooner than later. So like, does it make more sense for them to take a Thompson twin and take the slow roll, or to grab a guy who fills a need, a shooting need alongside like Franz Wagner and like all their guards and their big guys, and they can play him in different spots and it gives some freedom to maybe go super big and they can play Franz at point guard and stuff. I just think that like that's a skill based like opportunity where if somebody's desperate for shooting, they could just reach and say, well, I think the guys from 4 to 12 are the same. And that's just where Dick falls, and he fits the better like skill need for them. I don't know though. I just know he tested a lot better than expected at the combine in terms of just mobility. So that's kind of the big thing. He's got like pedigree. He was like a 5-star recruit and stuff. So he's got all that going for him. And if the Pistons somehow got a second, first round pick, I would be happy to take him around 10 if he was there.
Absolutely. And the Magic have done it before, right? Mm-hmm. They did it a couple years ago with Franz. He wasn't supposed to go at, where to go, 5, 6?
I think he went 8 in the end.
So
yeah, after Kuminga at 7.
Was it that low?
It was 8. Yeah, I was looking it up the other day. I was a bit surprised, but it was pick 8.
Pick 8, yeah.
Either way, that was a shocker pick. I remember at the time thinking he wasn't going to go at 8. So they're keep an eye out for him for sure. I could see it.
Yeah, I think Wallace is good though too, because I think watching Kentucky was a mess this year and they were very disappointing for like the second or third year in a row. But Wallace is very, very, very big. He's just like 6'4", but he feels big. So I think that's where that Kawhi like comp kind of makes sense. I think also the fact that he can't shoot really is a good comp back to Kawhi. But like that's a dude, if the Pistons didn't have 15 point guards, that I wouldn't be opposed to them drafting if they were pitched. But I don't know. I'm always skeptical, but I'm still like PTSD'd from Kentucky point guards in Detroit just because it felt like the Pistons picked the only bad one, Brandon Knight.
Yeah.
Everybody else was great. It was just like, nope, the Pistons get Brandon Knight.
Oh man, Brandon Knight. All right, we'll move on to the next question here from Camille. Do you think it's a bad idea to make a starting 5 with 5 newly drafted players? I assume he means like with all of the young core plus this year's pick.
Mm-hmm. That's how I'm reading it too. I'd say yes. I think it is a bad idea.
Right. It depends on what you want to do as a team.
If you want to lose.
For sure.
The Houston Rockets did exactly that like 2 years ago, and look where it got them. So like it's possible.
I think you need veterans in there. You need you can't. That's why like Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, I want them brought back. I think for this team, you need that stability. Even though Bojan's not great defensively, what he brings offensively just opens up everything for the bigs and the guards. Like his spacing's vital. And then Alec Burks, just the fact, I mean, you don't want him running point guard, but just the fact he can handle a bit and create for himself. Like he was also vital he had a really good stretch in like January, February where I don't think he missed a shot. So you need those guys. Like everyone hates Corey Joseph. I think Wes is with me. We're Corey Joseph fans. I'm not saying bring him back, but you just need that stability. Like you can't roll out.
I think you're right.
18-year-old.
It goes back to the adults thing. You want to have adults in the room, and like I understand that. And that was a thing that I used to complain about a lot when the Pistons were like trying to rebuild with like the Drummond, the Greg Monroe era, and then they went out and got the wrong adults with like Josh Smith and Brandon Jennings and stuff. But like I think you're right. I think it's mostly finding guys who can be that like mentor type person. And I think like not all, that's a misconception a lot of people have, is like, oh, this guy's like 34, he'll be a great mentor for so-and-so. And it's like, no, like most of these dudes who are still clinging to their career at 33, 34 are not coming to your team to like mentor someone. Most times they want to play and they want to make their money. And so like finding those guys is important. I think like Corey Joseph's a great example. I think it was a unique situation because he played for like his favorite coach too. But yeah, I think the thing that bugs people about Corey Joseph is just the amount of time he played, not necessarily his presence per se. But I think I don't know. I think it's like if you have all these 5 young guys starting, like, are you going to be very good? No. But if you put Boyan in the starting lineup with it and you bring like Whitmore off the bench, for example, like, are you going to be that much better? Probably not. I think starting 5s are overrated. I think it's who plays the most minutes is what matters. So like it matters to players if they start most times, but I think in general, the guys who play the most minutes are the ones that are going to success as a team. So like, it's good for the, this is a bad analogy. It's good for the old basketball trading card in the back, but who cares otherwise? I will say the one thing though that I noticed last year is that the Troy Weavers never drafted someone in the first round and they've not started the following year. That's every single one at some point, I mean, during that yo-yo.
We're in the top 10 and not starting day one too.
True. Yeah. They've always gotten the opportunity. Yeah. So I would imagine the guy who comes in, whoever it is going to be out there day one, unless they just shift focus and decide to try and, be a lot better. But you're right. Yeah. From day one, they will be out there.
Wes, did you have any thoughts?
No, I think Brady pretty much covered it. If you want to be really bad, then it's a great idea. If you want to be a little bit better and maybe win like 28 to 32 games, then no, you probably shouldn't start 5 under 22-year-olds.
Well, the thing is like look at who we're watching, and I get that the Miami Heat's run to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I don't know if they're losing or winning right now, but I know that run is like once every 10 years type of situation. But you look at their lineup and you look at who they start, and like Kyle Lowry comes off the bench, Gabe Vincent starts, an undrafted guy, and it's like Caleb Martin's an undrafted guy and he plays a ton of minutes. And so it's like it doesn't matter where you play them, and Spoelstra doesn't really mince his rotations. He plays the guys who are going to be helpful and useful. So like I think that goes back to the previous question even of like, what do you look for in a prospect or a player as a fit? And like Miami just shows that you don't need to find any sort of archetype as long as you've got the like pillars of your team, which they have, which hopefully the Pistons have 3 of them. But those other guys should be able to fit in however they are, however you acquire them, as long as you are able to find even one of those caliber guys to just kind of add to this. That would be, I think that would be huge for the Pistons in the draft, is if they were able to like find their Caleb Martin in the second round. And like the Pistons have done that before. They found good second round picks. Joe Dumars actually, to his credit, like was great at finding guys who could play in the NBA in the second round. I mean, Jonas Jerebko, Kyle Singler, even during the dark times, like those guys could play and they could help you, and they helped other teams. I mean, Troy Weaver's team gave Kyle Singler one of the stupidest contracts ever. So like obviously, like he knew what he was doing.
Kyle Singler. Did not think I'd be discussing that man today.
No. Well, here we are. But I like I said, I hope they get something out of a second round pick, because I think if we look back, what the best second round pick they've had is Saban Lee, probably. I guess Isaiah Livers is kind of that mold, but I think we overrate Livers for what he's shown. But I don't know. I think they could
probably Livers just because he's shown more, even though it's not been awesome, but it's not good.
He's tolerable. That's the thing, is like you look at Livers and you compare him to like Miami. And Miami, I will give, like, Pat Riley's a a genius, and I don't want to compare Troy Weaver to him because it's not a fair comparison, but like all those undrafted guys they get, I don't know if they're more talented than Isaiah Livers, but they just fit the system so perfectly that it doesn't matter,
Great.
Last question here from Scenic. Do you guys think Troy will pick up Amani Bates with that second round pick? He shot the lights out at the combine, but his defense was as good as Bogdanovich. Amani Bates, thoughts? What do we got?
I don't see a reason to draft him. I think he's not proven he's like the only reason that we think he's good is because of his name and his pedigree. But like even in the MAC, at a bad team in the MAC that didn't even make their conference tournament, like he didn't elevate that team. Like you would think if an NBA player, former like top, almost like better than Victor at one point, years ago, level of prospect came in there and played on Eastern Michigan, that he would lift them at least to the MAC conference tournament, but they didn't make that. And, he had some fun moments. Like I remember watching him against Michigan and it was a lot of fun and he was very like electric, but like, do we really need to go? I don't know. What market is there for tall guys with short arms who like to just shoot the ball and just take it off the dribble every single time? Cause I don't know what else Amani Bates even brings outside of like, he loves to shoot the ball.
Yeah, that's it. That's all he brings. And so the question, we bring up the combine, right? He shot the lights out of the combine.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But there's this account, Cali Drafts. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Amani Bates had the worst by far. He was in single digits, the only prospect in I think the last 10 years to get a single digit combine score, athletic score from this guy. I think he was at like 7, and the next highest might have been 10 or 12 points higher. So he's not only is he not athletic, he's got alligator arms, and he still thinks he's Carmelo. Like, I'll pass, maybe on a 2-way, but even then, I think he needs to get out of Michigan too, just from like his story. I think he just needs to go somewhere else. That'd be good for him. I would very much like to pass on Amani Bates. I don't see it happening. Not at 31 too. Like maybe if you're at like in the 50s.
I'd sign him to a two-way contract. That's how I view him. And like I don't view him any higher than that. Like he's a 2-way guy who maybe turns into something. Maybe you get rid of him halfway through the season,
Yeah, I don't have much else to add apart from he seems like a guy who takes a lot of tough shots and doesn't make a lot of them. Like I don't have much more to add.
I mean, I just look at it and I'm like, just from being in like the Detroit area this year, and like Amani Bates is at Eastern, which isn't too far from Detroit. It's been 45 minutes to an hour. And then you look at in Detroit, there was Antoine Davis, who is not an NBA prospect either, but like just two dudes, one who's like physically gifted and has all the tools and played on a bad team. And you've got Davis, who also did not play for a good team, but again, like didn't have all the physical gifts, everything like that. He's a freaking baller, and he's obviously way older, but like still the comparison.
Sorry to jump in. Is he the guy who led like his all-time scorer?
He came up like 4 point. He came up like 3 or 4 points short, and the postseason tournament that Detroit tried to buy into, pay like $20,000 to go play, and so we could break the record, was like, we don't really want you to come. So he didn't get to break the record. But that's just like juxtaposing two guys who, one who's definitely not an NBA player and one who we're talking about with the 31st overall pick for, the Pistons, which I don't know. I mean, physically I see it, I know the name, I know the pedigree, but put it on tape. He hasn't been good. So like, what's the point? We don't draft bad players, do we?
Hopefully not.
I don't know. I mean, we got into it last week with Damon Allred from Detroit Bad Boys. Just there's so many more other options at pick 31. But that's a really valuable pick still. Like I think even Wes brought it up last week. Like that's a pick Detroit might use to package with some sort of player to get back into the first round. Like there's some value there with that pick, and I think you could use it a lot more wisely than taking a flyer on a high school phenom from 3 years ago.
Well, even on top of that, you're right. Like I think I've seen it both in, I think James wrote it in The Athletic, and then Omari wrote it in the Free Press today. They were talking about targets at 31. and both of them mentioned Jaime Jaquez from UCLA, who is like not the same player by any means, different story, 4-year player, but like that dude, I don't know what he's going to be in the NBA, but he is a good basketball player. And I think smart teams make good basketball players work. Like if you're smart and you know how to, work this guy into whatever you want, he will be on your team for the next, 8-10 years. I think that would be a nice way to spend that pick, is if they were to get a guy who, like I said, a second round pick who's not going to blow your socks off, but is going to contribute and be a contributor when you're good or when you're bad. That's the thing too, is like, if he fills a role, he'll fill a role when you're good too, right? Like he's scalable. So that's a guy I like there, just because he's just a bucket. Like he's just a very good basketball player.
For sure. Yeah. I wanted to get to one of the DBB comments before we wrap up here. So we'll finish on this question here from Cough33. I read Weaver and Casey think they have enough young talent. What are your thoughts, Brady?
I disagree.
Wes and I sort of touched on this earlier in the stream. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the Pistons talent pool this year?
I don't think it. Okay, so like, I saw in the title of the post on DBB, you guys had mentioned like play in next year. I'm like, I don't see that. Like, I think they are 2 years away from being in the play-in, barring a miracle of like Cade turning into Shea, Gilgeous-Alexander this year. But I think they could. I think if you're not going to go try and get like a difference-making guy, like if you can't go get OG Anunoby with that pick plus some stuff, like draft more young talent and kind of kick the can. It sucks. I hate it. Like I legitimately, like, it bums me out to say like just kick the can, especially because this next draft is not like this one. But like drafting another young guy, I was saying this the other day, is like, if you want to get the star someday, you have to trade one of your little treasures. You can't just, say, well, put it in my cup, please. Like, you can't just do that. So like, if you draft a good player number 5 and he's good, but he doesn't feel like a perfect fit, and you can move him for somebody else, next year, then like, sure, do it. Like, it's going to have to happen eventually. You don't have the same team from day one to, when you're finally good. So, I mean, just keep accumulating and hopefully uncover some diamonds in the rough instead of finding guys like James Wiseman, and maybe we'll be on to something.
James Wiseman.
So, the James Wiseman, it was so casual too. Just throws it right in there. I love it. So I don't know where they may have said it. I haven't read it, but I trust that it was out there somewhere. I just don't think they have enough talent. Like period. Kind of like what you were saying, Brady. Like I don't think you could look at that roster and say I have enough of blank. Like there's just not. Like it'd be great to add another Cade Cunningham. Like you don't even have enough Cade Cunninghams right now, and he's very unrealized as a player still. So no, I think you still need to be looking to add young talent. I think you still need to be looking to add any talent under 30 that could come in and play and be a good NBA basketball player. And that would be a really, really big get, like no matter what at this point. So I'm very much on the same page. They need more, period.
And not to be dismissive, like you guys have covered it really well. I think like if this team, I assume Koff's referring to like young talent, like in terms of draft picks. Yeah, but right. If we just look at the question, like if Detroit had enough talent, they wouldn't have
here.
Wouldn't have won 17 games. Yeah. Like, and with where the team is right now, like you get as much talent in the door as you can, whether you trade that, you develop that, do both.
Well, here's the thing. Think about too much talent. Like think about it this way. Like, okay, so they won 17 games. We are well aware of that. But say Cade Cunningham doesn't get hurt, and say that they don't do the March shutdown thing. Yeah, I think that's a better way to say it, right, talent. But like we feel so down in the dumps because they won 17 games and it was miserable to watch. But like if they put everybody on the floor and everyone stayed healthy and they played and they won 30 games, like I think the tenor of the conversation changes. But I think the answer to this question of do they have enough talent, probably still they don't. Like you look at 30 wins, you still need 30 wins and you're all healthy, just hypothetically, you still need to find 11 more wins to make the playoffs, to make the play in. So it's like, there's getting talent in a number of different ways. And like, Is a rookie going to help you off the bat next year? I don't think so. I love Jarris Walker, but he's not going to win them games. But like by next year, 2 years from now, I could see him being the best defender on the team, and that would be very useful. And I think that would organize a lot of the problems they have. So it's like, it depends. I don't know. I mean, you have to see something from somebody, Cade, a young guy. You have to see what he can do in this like big role we expect of him, because Wes, you said it, like he's very like a lot of the talk, but not a lot of the production yet. I think we need to see a year of him to see if he can be the guy before we sit here and say, yeah, they can go to like the second round in 3 years or something. We don't know that. We don't even know what he can do yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way that that Coffee just put it there, right? Because if you just look at the roster and you're just asking, like, do they have too many guys that are under 23? Then maybe, like I could see you looking at someone like Weaver looking at the roster saying we have enough 23 and unders. We need to get good players, veteran players who we know that they can do it. But in terms of like that crop of players that's under 23, like Killian Hayes probably is not talented enough to really not be replaceable. James Wiseman isn't. I'll throw Marvin Bagley in, even though I don't know if he's actually in that age range. Like he's definitely not. Stewart's got an argument, but it's not 100%. Cade and Ivy, you think are pretty solid. Jalen Duren, you're really hopeful for, but he still hasn't proved a lot. Mm-hmm. Like you need, like you were saying, you need more top level young talent. They just need to be adding as much as they can.
I think I see one comment there from CN Inc. where they say, I disagree. I think we have enough talent, but Cade, Ivy, and Duren are solid. Stu Livers. So like I think that's part two where like, yeah, Stu and Livers, I for sure can tell. And I think Diallo showed that. Those guys can be role players. Mm-hmm. Wiseman, I don't think we have no indication that James Wiseman can go in there and fill a role. I think he wants to be, his main thing is like, give me the freaking ball and move out of the way. Whether he like has that attitude or not, that's just his archetype and mindset as a player. So it's like, to me, when you have a big man who scores down low and really only does that, those guys don't, like, you don't have those guys off the bench. Good teams don't do that. Like if you think about big men in the playoffs right now, like Cody Zeller's running around for Miami, and like Boston doesn't have a big man who demands the ball and can't play outside 15 feet. So like they still need to find fit. I don't think fit matters to them right now. It's just trying to see who works where and if they can work. But like, if you add one more young guy to that, because you're going to lose Diallo. So, like, think about it that way, too. Does Jarris Walker fill a role with Diallo probably getting a bigger contract elsewhere? And does he step ahead of Stu, who then becomes your, like, swing power forward center off the bench? And, like, I think that opens up more doors. I think people underrate the fit there because it does kind of give you some flexibility, even if Jarris Walker isn't a small forward. And I don't think Bojan Bogdanovic is a great small forward defensively, but, like, it clears up some log jams for you and kind of makes it, come into the picture a little bit better, even though nothing's super clear at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap up here? I guess I just want to get Brady's thoughts. Brady's very active in our Slack chat, and I appreciate his insights. And
that's my safe space. That's where I say all the things I'm afraid to tweet. I bring them to you guys first, and then I bring them public after that.
So I think we'll close with Brady. I just would like to get your thoughts on the coaching search. Just how you're feeling. We'll close on that. I think that's a good note to close on.
Yeah, this was a thought I had today was, obviously we don't know if there is dissent or disagreement or what have you. I haven't seen a report from someone I trust enough to like say that with certainty. So like the reports or the rumors are, that Troy has his guy and Ollie, and Gores doesn't really feel super hot about that. And it sounds like from a report from Shams the other day that, Jaron Collins is out. So we've got two dudes. Does that mean that Troy's got his guy on this side of the line and Gores is the one who's pushing Charles Lee on the other side? And my question was, does that make, if you're a Charles Lee guy, does it make you feel better that it's Gore's guy and Troy wants to hire somebody else? Because like I don't know how to feel about that as a Troy Weaver or as a Charles Lee guy. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't like either of these options now. I don't like where this is going at all.
But I know it's become a bit exhausting, really, the whole situation, just from a fan point, like a fan point of view, like my care level has really like plummeted. And that's no shade to the candidates. Like they're not like the flashy names, and I get the concerns, but it's just, I don't know. I mean, I think like Pistons. Sorry, you go, Brady. I was just going to say, I think Pistons Talk posted a graphic today showing all the Pistons coaches in the last 10 years. And I mean, prior to Dwayne and Stan, like there was a lot of turnover with coaches. So look, while this process has been sort of, I guess just, it's dragged out. Like, I mean, if they ultimately find the right guy, like, I don't know, I'm cool.
It's kind of like you look at it, and like if you look at that list of Pistons coaches, the common theme there is it's a bunch of retreads. It is constantly retreads, going back to like Lawrence Frank and Maurice Cheeks and stuff like that. Like the Pistons wanted an established guy to figure this out, and they still do. I mean, that's the kind of the crazy part about where this is. I wonder if Gore's in deep down, if he wants to get another guy who's done the job before. But like, it makes it's kind of weird because like, Charles Lee could be a good coach. He was an assistant for a good coach, Mike Budenholzer. But like, we don't know if he's a good coach. And the same thing with Kevin Ollie. Like, we don't know if he's a good NBA coach, but like, he won a championship in college, and like, bad coaches don't win championships. Now there's other things about Ollie and how things went down at UConn that like are scary and make you nervous. But like, I don't fully understand the, like, at this point, knowing that like the Pistons aren't going to go hire a big banger coach like Monty Williams or Nick Nurse. Like, I don't understand why people are still so against Kevin Ollie, other than the fact that like he had a bad run at UConn at the end that started off good. I'm opening my eyes more to the possibility that like maybe the guy who didn't recruit very well and his team suffered is going to be a better coach when he doesn't have to worry about getting the players himself, So I'm open to both of them. I think I still like Charles Lee a little more, but like Ollie is not like, I'm open to seeing how that plays out. Like he's been, the other thing about Ollie too, and I'm rambling, is Kevin Ollie's entire career in the NBA, journeyman point guard. But if you look at every stop he had, like I know he played in Philadelphia, so he was kind of a keeper of Allen Iverson. He played in Oklahoma City. That's where Troy knows him from. He was kind of a mentor / like player like that to guys like Kevin Durant and Russ and stuff like that. If you go back to when he played for Orlando, well, I guess Orlando only played a little bit, but just in general, every stop he had, because he had a million of them, he was playing with other stars. Milwaukee in 2002, 2003, playing with Gary Payton that year. So like he's always been involved with guys. And I think that to some extent, I think the fact that the best players in the NBA always liked playing with Kevin Ollie, like, I think there's something to that. I don't know if it helps him as a coach, but I think it's an interesting, like, piece of insight.
For sure. It's, I don't know when this coaching surge is going to come to an end, but I think we hope it's in the next week or so. Just with the draft coming up so soon. Yeah. But thanks so much for joining, Brady.
Yeah.
Oh, Wes, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I just said it'd be nice to be done with it. I'm just excited for an intro press conference. That's all I want. I don't care who's hired. Just get someone up in front at a podium and say, I want to do X, Y, and Z with this roster. And then I can go, okay, great. Who do they want to look in free agency? That's all I care about.
Exactly. Well, no, thanks so much to Brady for jumping on. No, we had some technical difficulties there, but it was a pleasure having you. I'm sure most people are aware of who you are, but tell the people where they can find you and if you've got anything upcoming.
You can find my words on Detroit Bad Boys, and you can find me on Twitter at Brady_Fred.
Awesome. And thanks to my co-host, Wes. And thanks to everyone who submitted questions tonight. Appreciate the support so much. Special thank you to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And yeah, join us next week from Thursday at 8 o'clock. Can't wait to talk more Pistons.